Jamie, I'm just testing. Can you hear me? Yeah. All right, very good. Thank you. For all of those, we are recording this meeting. It's online. And public comment. Who wants to go first?
Oh, I think I will go first today.
Eileen Unger?
Hi. I'd like this added to the minutes when I'm finished. Nancy, please. My name is Eileen Unger, in case anybody doesn't know, and I reside here in Killingworth. We own our home on 148 on the Bread Girl, for anybody who cares. Most of you know me and the many community-related things that I've been involved with, the COVID vaccination efforts, to the many donations of time, talent to civic organizations, including events thrown by both political town committees. I believe that's interests at heart. That being said, I am very dismayed and more than a bit taken about you via video. As you are aware, I am married to Richard Plaintiffs, who guarantee every one of them will give him a rousing endorsement. Understand that this is not about reversing your decision. Richard's not looking for that. Neither am I, believe me. However, the very least you owe Richard at this point is a thank you for his service. The right thing to do would be a very public apology for your utter disrespect. Killingworth is a small town with a population of approximately 6,000 people. It's everyone's best interests, not just the interests of those who have aligning political or social views. Your salaries, regardless of size, are paid with taxpayer dollars from every resident. Killingworth functions well and is a wonderful place to live, raise children, or operate a small business. And much of this is due to the hard work and efforts of its residents, whether they hold elected positions, volunteer their time to serve on numerous committees, or commit their time, money, and talent to the many different organizations or groups that operate here in town. I'm almost done. Why on earth would anyone choose to volunteer their time and talent, paid or unpaid, only to subject themselves to a screaming and condescending selectman? Why would they choose to volunteer their time and talent to potentially be accused of holding the town hostage? This unacceptable behavior will truly be the downfall of volunteerism in this small town. Ms. Young, you are an attorney. You take every opportunity to remind us during these meetings, and as such, you are fully aware of the import of the rule of law and the screaming, interrupting, and the whole point of order the other night. I would like to remind Ms. Young that you were not elected to be first selectman, nor are you the chair of these meetings. If you are unhappy with the way a meeting is going, I would respectfully suggest that you defer to the chairperson to manage the situation, in this case, Ms. Gorski. And if you are not able to do that, then I posit that you are not fit to hold the position and would ask that you respectfully resign. The inconsistencies and hypocrisies of the meeting last week and the subsequent hiring of a building official who has the that were expressed as quote-unquote reasons for not appointing Richard is unacceptable. You can't question whether a resume is submitted for one candidate and then appoint another before his resume is on file, which you did. You cannot question the ability of someone having a similar full-time position in another town and turn around and appoint someone who is in the exact same situation. You did that too. You cannot tell one taxpayer you may not agree with that they cannot speak during a meeting and turn around and allow others you agree with to do so. Please remember that actions speak much louder than words. You can claim that your behavior and decisions are procedural, not personal or political, but your continued questionable actions have made it clear that the personal and political does indeed play a deciding role. It is no longer okay to practice the revenge politics that have been occurring over the past year and a half. Cut it out. Do your jobs. Do what is right for the town, not right for your political party or your town committee because their leadership might have been unhappy with the way they perceive they were treated. We don't operate in the past, and our issues aren't solved in the past. Stop assuming that because you sit in those chairs that we aren't paying attention. Have enough respect to actively listen to what the taxpayers are saying when they talk. Put down the packets you should have read before you walk in the door. Compose yourselves and have the respect not to make faces while the taxpayers are expressing their concerns. Understand that you do not know everything. And when an expert is sharing their hard-earned knowledge with you, have the respect to sit quietly and actively listen to what they have to say. If you're unwilling to look at a form of government that puts a professional manager at the helm of what should, in all honesty, be run like a business, then prove to the taxpayers that the form of government that we currently exist under still is relevant and applicable by fulfilling your jobs as servants of the public. Take a lesson from Richard. For this, I insist you do better.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
I'd just like to summarize just one little point. I think that as residents of this town, we are.
For the record, Eileen blew it.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Just an explanation or further explanation as to why our Board of Selectmen chose to knowingly vote to put a plan in place that did violate state statute and potentially put Mr. Planus's license in jeopardy. Obviously, he chose not to do that, but the whole idea that you would vote on that, again, knowingly, because it was discussed that obviously in the past that had been done. But I think, again, that was a pretty big deal to put a plan in place or a potential plan in place that you knew went against the statute.
Thank you. Eileen, anyone else?
I'd like to, but I don't want to follow this up with something.
I feel like you just want to take a moment to pause. Please follow it up, because
Sorry.
let's lighten up the mood. This is, we need to get business done. Go
So,
ahead.
Jen Pavalora, for the record.
Hi, my name is Jen Favalora. I'm with Killingworth Youth and Family Services. I just wanted to come here and introduce myself as the interim executive director. I understood that you guys were speaking about Youth and Family Services last meeting, and I wanted to clear up a little bit about how we are actually having our coalition meetings right now, and we actually had one earlier today, just came from there. Our mission is really about the youth and their families in our communities, both Haddam and Killingworth, and we work with prevention and while I'm in a room full of volunteers looking to we only have 2 members from Killingworth on our board. We'd be happy to ask for any more help on our board while we're there. But just wanted to also mention, I got to speak with Nancy last week, about the opioid distribution settlement funds that have benefited Killingworth, and wanted to share some of the knowledge that I shared with Nancy, which was that in all the meetings that I've been a part of recently, there is definitely a slow going to the work that needs to be done. The state advisory board was just formed. They are not meeting until March 15th. And as we know with the state, there's always reporting and mandates that we have to follow. And so I just urge with caution as we move forward. I appreciate the work to have stakeholders, every stakeholder involved in that work, but I just wanted to mention before all money is spent or donated, that consideration is given to the fact that there will probably be requirements that happen. And as of right now, everybody I've talked to as part of those advisory committees has no idea what those are. So it's all in the works, as our state is probably one of the last. And there's plenty more money coming too. CVS and Walgreens settlements just happened, as I mentioned to Nancy.
I just signed that off.
And to do a entire plan, a comprehensive plan altogether in stages might be in the best interest of Killingworth.
Thanks, Jen. Anyone else want to speak?
Bill Burley, resident of town, and I did watch the video of the last meeting, and I didn't plan on doing this, but I agree with what Eileen said.
Oh.
I really couldn't believe what I was listening to. And then later on in the meeting, you guys actually went against something because there was a state statute not to do that, which I can't remember the specifics now, but I really couldn't believe it. What I heard on somebody that was willing to do it. And I don't know everything, I don't know why, obviously I don't know why 2 out of the 3 were against it. At least it seemed like 2 out of 3 were against it. There could have been some other things there that I don't know about, but what I heard, as a taxpayer, I couldn't believe it. I've always heard these things about town meetings, but to actually witness it, I was kind of, I was just put off a little bit.
Thank you, Ben. Anybody else? All right. With that, I'm going to move on. Approval of minutes. Are there any corrections to the February 13th, 2023 regular meeting minutes?
Second to the last page, under EKA ARPA request, the third from the bottom line where it says any other requests that come to the town, whether it's town council or ARPA funds, I think you mean ARPA, ARPA.
Oh, okay.
I also want to clarify on page 3, where it has motion, it starts with motion unanimously passed 300. It says for Selectman Gorski advised Thomas Fogarty stepped down from his position with the River Cog.
Correct.
Did he actually have a position?
He did. So there are,
He said he had so that he actually had. Just to clarify, okay. And also, is the title actually River Cog Regional Housing Committee? Is that what it is?
it is, and he's a member of that. And I'll explain later.
Okay, thank you.
On page 2, appointments, motion number 4 down the bottom of the page, says Selectman Anino inquired whether or not the town would be able to hire a building official who works in the same position in a neighboring town. I don't believe that's what I said. What I asked was Anino inquired whether or not the town could be supported by a building official who works a full-time position in a neighboring town.
To be supported, okay. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Are there any corrections to the February 22nd, 2023 meeting of the Board of Selectmen? Okay, if not, the minutes are approved as presented. Moving on to refunds and abatements. I move to approve the following refunds and abatements, all for overpayment, and allow them to follow their normal course. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Moving on to appointments. The Committee on Aging, while we have received appointments from the KVFC, I do wish to table this to the next meeting when I have received additional appointments from the KRTC as well, so we appoint everyone at the same time. And then I move on to appoint John F. Mancini, R., to the Open Space Committee. John failed to be sworn in, so he just needs to come back. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I also move to appoint David J. Cotillo, R., to the Open Space Committee, who also failed to get sworn in. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then moving on to the River Cog appointments, just so that everyone is aware. The River Cog coordinates several regional plans and committees. River Cog bylaws state each municipality can appoint one representative and an alternate to these committees. Minority representation does not apply here, so this is just somebody from the town stepping up to do this work. As an example, Alec Martin is currently serving as a member of the River Cog Plan of Conservation and Development, and Stephanie Warren is an alternate. We also, Jamie, you as well, are serving as a regional member of the Water Authority, or as our member for the Regional Water Authority. Tom Fogarty was serving in that capacity on the housing, or the alternative housing plan. When I reached out to him, River Cog had asked me whether or not he was going to re-up this year. I reached out to him and he respectfully declined. So that's where that stood. I do have somebody who is interested and who has experience. Richard Linus has, not only has he had experience with working with alternative housing in Clinton, he has agreed to accept this appointment to the regional housing plan. So At this point, I would like to move to appoint Richard R. Pinus, the second to the River Cog Regional Housing Plan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Budget season. Actually, Jen, you'll be invited very soon once I buttoned up some of our openings. But I didn't have any questions on the budget. Did either of you?
At this point.
All right. I'm going to move on to new business, town hall emergency repairs. So Lou, I know you've seen this, and I don't think Jamie has. For those of you in the room, just look up. Several weeks ago, when we had a lot of rain, those two back panels, we walked in here in the morning and there was a puddle of water and water all over the seats. This roof, this is a flat roof, this is a 1999 modular, and this roof is failing. We also have water damage towards the front of the building by the tax collector's office. And we also have water damage in the town clerk's office by the vault. So there's significant roof work that needs to happen. If you add up everything that's in here, we're looking at a total of $75,000 to repair everything. Now, I know we talked about this as potentially being an emergency, but at this point, I'm of the opinion we need to follow normal process. In other words, we need to go to RFP, we need to understand, we've got to work this through. I need to go to Board of Finance and ask them to recommend where this money could come from. And then we need to go to town meeting to have it approved. I mean, yes, we're gonna have to keep our thumb in the dam to keep the water from pouring in, but it's gotta follow normal. It's gotta get done this year, folks. I'm just letting you know, it's gotta get done this year. It's just a matter, we need to go through process in order to make it happen.
Nancy, you said it was in the 70s. The total on here is 49.8.
No, if you add up all of these.
They had 49 item. Yeah.
So there's the tax collector roof replacement, which is over there, is $55,600, and this is for $49,800.
Yeah. I would add that it's, I think we need to do a more comprehensive job because there's also the ancient HVAC systems that serve this part of the building as well. So I agree with you, Nancy. I think we should spend a little more time, package this, probably put this into our capital plan for next year and approach it that way. I won't beat this one to death because we talked about it at the last meeting, but this is really the sort of a different approach to maintaining the assets of the town that we haven't been real crisp at doing in the past. We've let things run till they break, which is what we're experiencing here for certain. And at least this Board of Selectmen is trying to be much more aggressive in terms of addressing things that are broken and getting them fixed while they're still at the affordable stage. Certainly this, which likely when it's all done is probably going to be close to $200,000, but that's a lot less than having to put in a $4 million extension on Town Hall if we're able to do a life extension by making that investment. A decision isn't made yet. That will be your decision to make at a town meeting, but it is the direction that I think is a better approach.
No, thanks, Lou. Jamie, anything else? I'm going to move on to stakeholders for the opioid issue plan development, as Jen spoke to. So we did receive an email from Journey Home Recovery Living after we met with them the last time, and they're looking to meet to develop an intervention prevention plan that will meaningfully address the town, the concerns our town is facing. Their goal is to develop an engaging program, outreach, and services that meet expectations and is sustainable once the initial development implementation is executed. And sustainable is the key. And we also have to have measurable results as a result of that. It's critical they're looking for buy-in from key stakeholders. So we urge you to invite to the planning meeting those who are the influencers and decision makers. I know we had before Kathy Zandy from our Board of Ed rep, she had recommended that we have holders. If, Lou and Jamie, if you have any other stakeholders you feel are important, let me know. And I'll make the arrangements to have that meeting. So that's where we're at. Through town event, the through town event, can I have a motion to approve the through town event? Okay, Jamie approved or motioned,
And I'll second.
and Lou seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right. Moving on to old business, the KVFC list of full active members in good standing. So included here is not only the letter from the KVFC, but also a list of requirements that allows an individual to be full active members in good standing. I move to approve this list.
So it was tabled, so I don't think you need to move it. You need
Oh.
to pick it up from the table.
Pick it up from the table, thank you. So at this point, can we still approve it? How does that work?
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right, I move to approve the KVFC list of full active members in good standing. All right, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Eric Auer Park, who wants to talk about it? We've been talking about what we need to do at, or what we had planned to do at Eric Auer Park. We've had folks asking what we should be doing at Eric Auer Park, so I yield the floor to you to give us an update.
I mean, basically, the last meeting was the question of like how we came to, I believe, the conclusion we came to what we thought we needed. Basically, we looked at the number of fields available for the kids in the different towns. We looked at the number of kids in the user groups and how many kids using the multi-purpose fields. And that's causes a lot of overcrowding, there's over-practicing. And we have a total of 7 fields available in the 2 towns for those almost 30 teams. So looking at that, we do have, with HKL, there are around 400 users using the fields for that group. There's 14 fields roughly that they can use. Looking at building an all-purpose field for all-purpose full-size hardball field. There are very few teams in the HKL group that will be using that field. Looking at the information, we have basically one team. And to build a field for one team to maintain it going forward for that one main team would be difficult from our standpoint as far as where we get the most use out of all the fields.
So you're talking almost a third, well, you have 2/3 as many people using the all-purpose fields as you do.
Almost 3 times.
Did you count the fields that are used in Haddam towards the 4 fields that are used by the HK soccer groups, or no? You're only counting KRP?
No,
You're or what about the middle school?
there's
And
7 fields. If you
oh, you just said 4. Sorry, that's why I thought you said there were only 4 fields that were being used by the 1,100 kids.
7. There's 4 fields at KRP. That makes it a little bit more difficult for us to fields in the case. I mean, but looking at what we have, that's why we came to it. It wasn't like we didn't think about it and say, okay, but with a baseball field for a limited number of kids, we had to make an all-purpose field to use it for football, cross, soccer. Everybody, now there's I don't know if anybody saw the signs for rugby in the area.
So Lou, I know you
Jim,
had questions.
I wanna make my thoughts clear.
Yep.
This is not about soccer and it's not about baseball. For me,
That's what our thoughts are too.
it's about process.
Yep.
And what I'm concerned about is that there was initial plan that was put forward years ago. I think it goes back to 2016, where maybe farther, where a Jack Ahern field was taken out of Sheldon.
Yeah.
And a plan was approved, and I believe I was a selectman at the time, and not I was on zoning, but it was approved at least with my vote.
Yeah.
Conditional that the next phase of the plan would be to replace that field.
Yeah.
And that's actually been explicitly included in our plan of conservation and development. those changed, that's neither here nor there, but it was memorialized there.
Yeah.
It was memorialized in the grant application that went into a baseball field to be at our part. We need to do to make sure that the taxpayers who ultimately make that decision get the opportunity to voice their opinion. And it may very well end up being a multi-purpose field. I would not want to make it about money. Because if it's about money, I'd like to know more about that so that maybe we can make sure that if we don't have the funding, we look at what we take to deliver on that. But I still think this is more about process than anything.
So are you suggesting we go to, back to town, we're gonna have to go to town meeting.
I don't know that we
have
really
to
have a
move.
choice.
Yeah, we have to go to town meeting.
From where I sit, the only other alternative is to continue with the original grant application, which was approved for a baseball field. If there's an issue related to money, let's talk about what that money is. But if we're going to change the plans, we're not the body that makes that decision, not this Board of Selectmen, and it's not Park and Rec, it's the taxpayers. And so we have an obligation to go back to town meeting and say, we've decided to change direction, and the demographic information that you provided may rule the day, but that's where it's gotta go, from where I sit.
You know, and we actually, good timing, because we're gonna have to have a town meeting to deal with a roof. So I move that we send this to town meeting for review.
What would the question be for town meeting? This or that, or how do you
That's a good, yeah.
phrase the question?
As Park and Rec, can I say something?
Yeah.
Keep in mind, we were doing this as an all-purpose field, but it's being built with baseball in mind. So at any time when there's a need or the money to do it, we just have to put an infield in.
You know, and that's true. But I think you're right, Jamie. What do we do for process? What's the question that we ask? Do we spend?
Chris, I'm on Park and
I'm sorry, yeah. This is a Board of Selectmen meeting. Let's figure out the process and then we'll go from there. What do we do in terms of, what do we present to the taxpayers? Do we present to the taxpayers that based on numbers, there's a change?
So I just heard something that was very different than we heard at the last meeting, which is that this is an interim step.
Can I?
He's on Park and Rec.
I'm on Park and Rec.
Hang on just one second. This is an interim step and that we have not lost sight of the baseball field. If that were to be a condition of moving this forward, I would be supportive of that as if it was a matter of record, so that we don't lose what we've committed to. And then if we're able to raise the money to build that baseball field, then we do that.
Well, we don't want to lose the $500,000.
None of us do.
Right.
None of us
Right.
do.
So,
None of us do. And-
baseball has to be involved in that. But as Chris can attest, because Chris builds fields for other
How is
towns.
baseball involved if there's no baseball field? as part of the
Hang on,
process?
So
Understood. This
Chris
is a
Smalley on our
Board of
Park and Rec, he's an excavator, he builds fields.
That's why
He can't build a baseball field for $500,000.
How much does it cost, actually?
here-
It'd be nice to know.
Can I speak at some point, or Chris with Park and Rec? So when this budget was put together about 10 years ago to grab this grant, that's when Glenn and Eric Auer and these guys got together. It came up to 500,000. In 10 years, this has changed greatly of what this thing's gonna cost to make. The fence alone is somewhere around $200,000 to how the conceptual plan. Now, this is just a conceptual plan to put the baseball field on where Eric Auer is. We still have to go to engineering to get a bid design. We have to get a well, we have to take this to see if we can get the well to even work. We might have to put another well in. There's another 40 or 50,000. This number could explode, and that's what, when we looked at this, we said, like Bill said, we said, what can we build with the 500,000 that everybody in this town will not, and we don't have to go back for another 200 or whatever it is. So we said, we asked Glenn, who went to Roger Nummergut and said, can we get a conceptual plan for what we think we can build for the 200,000? Minus a lot of fencing, because fence is going through the roof right now. And we weren't gonna put a field in. A baseball diamond as we speak right now. And if you remember in all these things, we have to relocate those stone walls, which is a humongous expense because that was part of Eric Auer's original, and there's a stone wall that runs through this. There's blasting, there's under drains. It's not like we're gonna scrape the dirt off and put a baseball field in. There is a lot of material that needs to move. And if everybody knows, everybody's had kids probably up at Eric Auer, the 4 main fields are very dry because there's a major under drain system underneath that. That's also gonna have to be duplicated at the baseball or all-purpose field. So when we went back and looked at the whole budget, we said, like Bill had spoken to and Jim and all of us have spoken to, what can we build for the money that we are going to get? And we said, let's build a field there, let's get it leveled. And if baseball says we have an enormous amount of people coming in and we have more than 16 kids that are gonna need to play on this thing, that was based to us back when about 20, it was at one of our Sheldon Park meetings, because it was during COVID. Ed Marola said there was about 1 team that was going to play on a large hardball field. That was back when it was KLL, so I don't know how much has changed for HKLL. But for KLL, there was only 1 team. Then we looked at our budget constraints and we said, well, this is what we can maybe try and build with the money that we could get from this grant. Never saying that we were never going to try and build more things and add to it over time as the town was able to get money. If we were able to get another grant, we could add more to it, but it was what we could get for that money at that time and what we thought we could perform. Yes, we've never got any bids because, like I just said before, we've got to send this out to a design group, which then they come up with a bid package, which most people, then we have to get bids on it. And this is probably a year out before we even start this thing. I mean, even if we grab the money, if Nancy signed it today, all we can do with that money is hire an engineering firm to start designing off conceptual plans.
I'm sorry.
No problem. Yeah.
This is, I just want everyone to understand, this is a Board of Selectmen's meeting.
Sure.
We are having a conversation with Park and Rec because we are talking about the ballpark. So it's not have your concerns as well, but we're here to listen to what Park and Rec has to say to us, so.
So thank you very much. I mean, I appreciate the background. I fully understand.
Yeah, we're not trying to, and I want everybody to understand, we're not trying to get rid of anything to do with baseball fields.
But the problem remains for me that the application does not speak to a baseball field. I could see my way to moving this thing forward, and I think we should, if we could say that this is a phased approach towards the baseball field, and that we proceed in that fashion, because I've looked at sets of plans, there's nothing that's happening with the multi-purpose field that isn't reusable as a baseball field. The only thing that's different is there's no backstop, there's no skin.
And Chris, what's the son now, has designed it that it's big enough to put. It was always
It's
built.
essentially the original design, it just doesn't have the
Correct,
diamond on
because
it.
we were trying to figure out where we could come in. Our biggest concerns is we don't know how much a well is gonna cost.
But I would still encourage us to move in the direction of the baseball field so that we can get the cost. Let's not assume that we can't afford to do it. Let's put the plan together, and we can always drop back and put in the multi-purpose field and then preserve that opportunity for the next grant or the next fundraiser or the next Major League Baseball player that comes from Killingworth.
And that's what we always, and that was our,
Came from Killingworth.
yeah, that was always our discussion at the KRP meetings. I mean,
So-
Glenn has always tried to say, this is a hardball field, but under what we figure we can build with our budget, this is what we can get.
But it's not in the plan, right? So it's not in the plan.
It's not in the current
Yeah, so
application.
It needs to be a prioritized plan. If I'm reading you right. So you list out all the things that you need for a baseball field or check off what you also need for a multi-purpose field. And recognize what we have funding for and what we don't have funding for. And move forward with the application, what we can get done, but know that there's going to be a plan to move forward in the future.
And if those things are itemized and there's dollar amounts put next to them or itemized, we heard at a prior meeting from a lot of the baseball folks, the Little League folks, that there's a willingness for fundraising and outreach, that they don't just need to get to the table and know how much to raise. And so I think that helps us with the second phase, if we can just get the itemization down. So it feels like we're close, right?
It would have to go to, so it could start at, it would go back as the first conceptual drawings that we have of KRP.
Be something like that.
So that would be our design that we would go after.
Yep.
Something of that would be sent out back to either the design engineer up in Rocky Hill that originally designed, and then there would be bid specs.
So what do we have to do to update the application so that I can sign it and you can move forward?
I think it goes forward just how it is. Everything is on it. It just doesn't
It
say,
doesn't say baseball.
I think the narrative has to reflect that it's gonna be a baseball field. And that, the approach will be to do an initial phase with the grant funding that we have. Doesn't have to be that descriptive, but we'll move forward, and then as we're able to raise additional funds, we will proceed with the finishing pieces towards a baseball field. That to me would meet the spirit of what we presented to the town, and would reserve that, that possibility in the future. And then if in the future, you come back and say, listen, we've looked at this and it really doesn't make sense to put a baseball field in, that can go right to the town and the town can say yes or no.
then it would go back to a town meeting.
Yeah, but I think.
We just don't want to lose the 500,000 to get something
Nobody
out of
does.
it.
Nobody does.
We don't want to lose the 500,000, but what we also don't, our concern too is obviously the taxpayers here are going to pay to maintain this next year and every year after that. We want to make sure that as taxpayer, I don't want to pay for things that are not advantageous to the general population of the town. And that's part of the things that we want to also be cognizant of. As far as how do we look at going forward, what makes the most sense, what gets the most use, right? Because we can do a lot of things in the town to support a lot of organizations. We've had pickleball show their interest a few times.
And we recognize all of your efforts to be good stewards.
And all the other requests that come to the emails that, can we do a bar dog park, can we do, I could go on and on, but just we want to make sure that we think of what's the endless funds and endless space. We can do a lot of things.
I appreciate what you're saying, but that's why we go to town meeting once a year with our capital plan and we present those things. And that's why I don't think we can just shift. If we can take your plan and put it into some phased approach that has a trajectory towards a baseball field.
Yeah.
You can continue, you can do your design work, and then you can have it bid. We should know what that number is.
Yeah.
And then you can decide, okay, if we can't afford this, we can trim it back to this point, but then at least we've got the information that we need, and then we have the benefit of time to revisit whether it needs to be a baseball field or whether it needs to be an all-purpose field, and it can go back through the normal process of approval to do that.
My concern was, I'll talk to Julie from the state to see how we do that, and I'll have to figure that out with her.
Yeah, I know Elizabeth did reach out to her and did speak with her to make sure that she was aware that we're still actively pursuing this. We're getting paperwork. So it's just a matter of how we work this second phase into the application.
Do we have a deadline that we're working on?
Not right now.
Because we also want to be concerned that it doesn't come out like Sheldon, where there's no dugout, the dugouts aren't finished. Everybody's talking about, well, we just raised more money for this new baseball field. Well, we can't even get money to put a roof over the dugouts. So,
We get one here first.
So is there any, I thought that we were invited to this meeting actually
it's
to
mostly-
participate, but.
No, it's not a participatory,
Okay,
unfortunately. It's,
Where can we speak?
is there a time that,
We
yeah. I
have to
thought-
wait for a town meeting, public town meeting, in order to
public
voice
town
our.
meeting, or you can certainly reach out to us and provide us with your feedback.
Didn't we have this conversation like 2 weeks ago when everyone was?
I thought that you invited, I genuinely thought that you invited us this meeting to participate in the meeting.
And I know you'd asked, and so again, these are selectmen's meetings, and this is not, it's a public meeting, yes, but it's our doing business.
Mhm.
And here we did have Park and Rec giving us feedback. This isn't something where we can get all of your input and, you know, it's not an interactive session, unfortunately.
I think
And
that
it was my bad, because we did let you speak quite a bit last time. But I do need to take control over these meetings. I do need to, I want to hear what you have to say. I know you want to be a voting member. You know, you talked about that. You know, folks need to get to the level of being on Park and Rec before you're a voting member.
I just am trying to understand the process.
It's quite the process, but.
Sure.
But it is very structured. So certainly, all of you can email.
Well, code, you could amend your agenda to have public comment added at the end if you would like.
I could, absolutely.
And given the amount of people that are here, it would probably
I
be a good
could-
for
I
you.
could do that. I could allow
No,
for
because
public comment.
I would have actually spoken at the beginning had I known that we weren't going to have more of a
Procedurally, I can do that.
Okay, great, thank you. 'Cause I'm new to this, so
Okay.
appreciate it.
All right, sounds good.
So are you gonna add public code comments?
Can I go on with the agenda first? Thank you. I will, I'm gonna do quickly an ARPA policy update. I wasn't prepared to move on the motion, that, for the policy that I received from Selectman Anita, but I am now. I reviewed it. I made sure, Gina and I went through it to make sure, it fits within her process. We may need to tweak a form or two as we go forward, but I think we're okay. So I move to approve the ARPA policy.
Again, the motion's been made and
Oh, yeah.
seconded, so I think we can pick it up from the table and vote.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Quickly, I'm going to move on to a PFAS update. So our insurance carrier, I know you asked questions, our insurance carrier no longer covers environmental claims. So Canton was the last town to receive insurance monies for their PFAS contamination, and Kerma since dropped that addendum. Gina and I are speaking with Joshua Klein, who is a coverage specialist with a firm called Glatfelter Claims Management. He had reached out to Kathy at the beginning of all of this in August of 2021. More to follow. I'm going to talk to him next week. Also, I will say the PFAS town hall was successful, and that was pretty remarkable. I am working with DPH on an investigation into whether the salt shed is leaching into a nearby residential well. In the meantime, though, we have another opportunity to apply for a drinking water state revolving fund, and my plan is to submit one for sodium remediation, which seems to make sense in light of where we're at.
Nancy, I'm asking for a little more clarification on the history of our insurance claims. And where I'm going with this, we've heard very little about our insurance, so I would like to get more of that background, what really took place. Because, you know, it sort of feels, you know, like we've got these insurance policies in place, one for the fire department, one for the town, that are for precisely these reasons. And for our insurance carriers to put a little pressure on them so that if in fact they don't want to cover this or won't cover this or whatever, then at least they can get in the boat with us to start advocating for more help from the state or the feds on this, rather than.
I know Gina has reached out to him, or out to Kerma, and the answer was
Is
no.
Kerma is the fire department?
It's ours. I don't know if the fire department is a separate one.
I think we have two different policies. Kerma sort of strikes me as the one that could potentially cover the sodium chloride problem. The fire department, I would think, would be the PFAS. And I want to emphasize when I say this isn't about blame anybody. Nothing was done wrong. But this, to me, strikes me as exactly why you have insurance policies.
And Gina didn't respond today, so let me follow up with her,
Right.
because she does own that relationship with the insurance company.
And again, if it doesn't go this way, at least let's get them standing with us shoulder to shoulder when we try and advocate for more resources from other than our tax dollars.
Yeah, and I got to follow up, like I said, I don't know where Kathy stood with this Glatfelter Claims Management Company, so.
All right.
All right, now we are at the end of new business. So now I will entertain a motion to add public comment.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, public comment is back open.
May I just quickly say thank you, everyone, for being so interested in this topic, and for the Parks and Rec for always doing such a great job. Yes.
Name, please.
Oh, I'm Lauren Purley, not Burley, Purley. This is my husband, Eric Purley. And I'd like to say we do represent the baseball community in town, but also we have lots of other children who play on those multi-purpose fields too. So like we said a couple of other times, this isn't about baseball is better than or more important than, or that soccer or lacrosse or whatever. My kids played lacrosse, soccer, all the things. We love all those sports. We love sports. So it's not really about that. I would like to note and clarify that we as the Little League were not actually even asked for our registration numbers or our field use information until very recently, after we had actually inquired about the grant funds. So I actually don't really think that was necessarily taken into account. Those figures weren't necessarily taken into account when some of these decisions were happening, or at least we weren't included in that conversation.
It's in our meeting minutes when we were at Sheldon Fields from KLL,
but that was like 2019, 2020, right? So I mean, recently when it's been talked about.
It's when this grant first got issued to us.
Sure. So recently, when the monies are ready to be just, we're ready to like start receiving the funds, we weren't included in the conversation. We weren't talked to. We didn't get an opportunity to actually provide those figures. So I just wanted to clarify that one point. And also, I'd like to say that there's an excellent justification for this field, for this big field in the grant. And it's a multi-page, well-written grant that someone else wrote that talks a lot about why we need a full-size baseball diamond in town and who it would serve. And in fact, part-timing those very letters in support of the baseball diamond, I just wanted to make one team that would potentially serve. It serves way more and funded. So I just wanted to make those couple of points. Thanks.
What do you mean by funded?
I mean, the grants were like approved. Yeah. Sorry.
Can I just speak a little bit to that? I appreciate you sharing that, but I think from what I've heard now within this room with the clarification that we got about where we are and why, I think we're all pulling on the same end of the rope.
Okay.
I think we're pulling up in the direction of the original grant, recognizing that we may not have the funds to build that field, and we're going to get that sorted out through the process. And that will also afford us the time to regenerate this dialogue, to make sure that we've got the right number, so that when we go back for the second piece of this funding that's needed, whatever it is, it can be better informed if in fact it wasn't. And I'm not saying it wasn't, I'm not saying it was. I just think we've created the space for us to work that out.
Okay.
I think. Do we
I
agree with that?
And everybody, please pass that around. I need to, as this is a public meeting, I need to make sure I know everybody who's in this room. I think it's moving through. Did you have any comments?
Yes, Jason Waterbury. I'm actually not a Killingworth resident, but I am the last president of Haddam Little League, and I'm the first president of HK Little League. Ed Merle and I worked together to merge HK Little League. We were the last sport to be merged. The whole reason behind that was just because these kids are competing against each other and then competing with each other everywhere else. We weren't losing player numbers. We were actually losing volunteer numbers. That was one of the other main drivers. The Killingworth Youth League, Ed, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you had about half your board going, including no one really wants to step up. So that was really the main driver for the two coming together. I think Little League's perspective would be that we just want to have a seat at the table when these discussions are happening. Speaking professionally about just how municipal construction works, there's a lot of options. As a municipal engineer, my recommendation would be to design the whole thing. If you have concerns about being able to afford a baseball field versus a multi-purpose field, there's nothing against putting in bid alternates, and that way you at least get what it costs. HK or Haddam hasn't done it before, but we haven't had a reason to do it before. So like I said, we want to be part of the conversation. I feel like we were really part of the conversation when the decision was supposedly made to go to this multi-purpose field.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I would just say to be part of the conversation, we have to Park and Rec.
Yep. And that's our biggest thing, is just come to the meetings, we'll have a discussion with you. I mean, and I'm not trying to be mean, but when this thing was originally started, Ed was at our meetings. And KLL with that, and that's the only information we had. So that then we derive a plan from the information we have and the funding we have. It's like a, and also in our meetings, understand, we're trying to also take care of Sheldon fields that we're having a hard time maintaining all our fields as it is with the budget constrictions that we have in Killingworth, to keep Sheldon. Rocco is, and that we don't have a hard time maintaining soccer and football and lacrosse and every other field also. But we have to also look as a town that we're taking on another major expense keep in our park and rec budget that Killingworth is taking a big burden on. Killingworth, might I add, is taking a big burden on to have another hardball field put in.
Can I just remind you, this is public comment, so it really shouldn't be a back and forth.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine to talk, but this end shouldn't be talking because it's public comment.
Public comment.
Sorry, that was my public comment.
Hi, I'm Laura Lefko, I'm a Killingworth resident, and I am not anti-baseball. Let me just say that. I was on the board of one of the biggest baseball leagues in the southeast, Opioid Baseball in Palm Beach County. I was on that board for years and years. But I have, just what you said, I don't know your name, I'm sorry. Chris. When we ran that league, we ran it on county property. We dragged our own fields, we mowed our own fields, we lined our own fields. Does Parks and Rec do that for
No,
you?
HK does it.
So then the upkeep is,
Cutting the grass.
It's the cutting, the drainage, the well pump, that's really.
okay, because we cut our own fields too. So that being said, I was looking through the minutes, can't find it. I know in August, right after the 9th of August, when this grant was awarded, 2019, I was at a selectmen's meeting, it was either virtual or in person. Kathy Eno mentioned, our former first selectman mentioned that we had received the $500,000 grant. And she said at the time, but since so much time has elapsed, that money is no longer sufficient. And I was worried, I mentioned it to Nancy several times when she took office, that money would just go by the wayside. And we talked about trying to, is there an alternative use for this money? Because we don't want to just lose the money, right? And in Killingworth, we are notorious for voting big expenses down. And that's part of what I worry about. I never knew that there were grants. I wish I had known back then. I don't think we ever knew that there were grants from Little League or Babe Ruth. But I just want to prepare you that this goes to town meeting. The voters may very well vote it down, number one. And number two, we're all expecting a very big budget increase from the school board and at least 5 to 7% from the town.
We don't know yet, but close to 5.
Close to 5. And a very big increase from the school board. We've got $1.7 million increase built in before anything happens. So just keep that in mind, that we are all looking at a good-sized tax increase this year before anything else happens. So my position as a member of the public is do what you can, prepare for the future, and then if you can afford to build later, certainly do that. But I just want to bring that up, that was said in August of 2019. It was made very clear. I think it was yesterday.
Sorry, I broke my own rule. Anybody else, public comment?
My name is Ed Marola. Chris has mentioned my name a few times. I was the former president of the Killingworth Youth League, vice president, information officer. So I did attend a few meetings, as you mentioned, and when I was in attendance, I was told flat out, there's just not enough money, as Chris has stated. I've asked for numbers, I've asked for bid. That's all I want to see. I want to see actual numbers, not by the people on Park and Rec saying that this is what I do. Not to discredit Chris. He's an amazing guy, and I know he knows what he's doing, but we should be going out and getting bids and presenting that information so we can actually have numbers. There's a lot of discrepancies in this PowerPoint presentation stating why, as Jason mentioned, Killingworth and Haddam got together. It clearly says in here it's because the numbers are down. That's not why. I mean, I was at the District 9 meeting when the District 9 president said, you guys should join forces so you're more competitive for All-Stars. And as Jason mentioned, volunteers, so it didn't have to do with dwindling numbers. All other sports are HK. We wanted to join. We had bad blood for whatever, over stupid things year after year. Jason called me up when he got in. I said, let's do this finally. The schools have been regionalized for over 30 years. This all had to be written and submitted to District 9, and they approved it. So, when you're not getting the information that you're asking for, and you're going to these meetings, and quite honestly, I reached out, I said, at this time, the there was COVID and virtual, and the meetings are bouncing all around the place. Can you just tell me when the meeting's going to be? It was constantly changing. Felt like I was chasing this meeting. And then when I finally get there, answer my questions too. I have questions. Where are these numbers coming from? You just said we can't afford it. That's what I was told. I mean, what am I supposed to do with that? I've constantly said, I run the Shoreline Breakers now, which started out in Killingworth with primarily Killingworth kids, Haddam kids. It's expanded. I appreciate all the efforts that Park and Rec has done for the town and allowing us to continue to use these fields as our numbers grow. And we want to give back as an organization too. And I've said, you're telling me we're over budget, we need money. Tell me what we can do. I'm there putting money into the fields. I work with the Regional School District 17, access to their fields, working with them. So we'd like to build a partnership and have better communication. And, I think a lot of us will be going to these meetings here on out. And hopefully we can, form a bond here and work together. Right now, I know you said, let's not make it about sports, let's not make it about money, but it's all of these things, right? As far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, Park and Rec is made up of all men. Are there any women on the board?
Yes.
Okay. Any here?
One, right?
Okay. Is there anybody representing baseball or softball? I know we're supposed to go and attend, but is there anybody on the
No one
board?
has volunteered for baseball, no.
Now,
Okay.
keep in, we need to get on there for baseball. Now, keep in mind who recommends those
Yeah, I don't.
people. That's the Board of
Yeah,
Selectmen.
this is not a Park and Rec meeting. This is.
No, I understand. I just.
We'll be there next week. We'll see when it's next week, right?
2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay. We'll be there and.
The information's on the website,
Okay.
so it's always there, so it doesn't move.
Harder to
It's always
find.
posted.
It's always the second Monday.
It is now. There was a time when I was coming that it was hard to find.
It's always been on the calendar.
It's always the second Monday of the month. And you know why I know that? Because it's always our selectmen's meeting as well. Right.
But with COVID, the locations were changing, and sometimes it was strictly virtual, and
But it's always posted on the website. The website has location and it is virtual. It has.
I did call Jim when you gave me that information. He told me the position had already been filled.
Any other public comment?
Yes, Brian Blair, the Park and Rec Board. I think in the taxpayer interest, it should go to a town meeting, because since this proposal was made, numbers have changed. The multi-purpose far outweighs the baseball. Kids, Haddam, Killingworth, those kids. What Ed is running, they're coming from regional. You're never gonna have to watch kids from out of town play across from their yard.
You have the same
All our
kids
kids.
from other sports too.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. It should go to town
They're
meeting
pure HK kids.
and go to a vote. He has the DNA.
Anyone else?
Yeah, JD Callahan, town resident. I think my concern to what you said, sir, is the process. I feel as a resident that it's very clear what this grant is designated for. It's designated for baseball, which is fine. I have someone that plays both soccer and baseball. Has no preference. My concern is the process and the optics of it, because when you start changing things without a town vote, it's not a good look. It wasn't a good look when I heard what's happening, so I wanted to come and pay attention. And I think more so in the spirit of what this town's all about, why I moved here, why I live here, why I choose to raise my kids here, is that we all work together and we try to do the best thing. Parks and Rec does an excellent job. There's nothing against them or anyone else in the room. It's a matter of, it's very bad optics when you try to change things, especially when it's tax permitted, it's going to a taxpayer approval. So that's my feeling on it. I'm sure everyone has the best intentions, but just from the sheer look of it, it feels us against them. And I don't think that's a good thing to have in the town. I don't think that's a good thing to have anywhere, but certainly not where I live and where I choose to raise my kids. I'm from the South, I moved up here, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else than Killingworth. So that being said, I would hate to change things without due process, without everyone in agreement. Certainly don't want to lose the money. I know no one in this room does, but again, the optics and feel of changing it without everyone agreeing and approving doesn't sit right.
Can I speak one more time? So in our meeting when a bunch of you guys were on.
Comment or just-
Oh, Chris, sorry. when a bunch of HKLL was on they were on virtually with us. Glenn, and I can't, what's Glenn's last name? Johnson, was kept on saying, we're building a field with a baseball field in it. And you would ask, well, can we make it smaller? Can we do a small field there? Can we? And he kept on reiterating, we're trying to design something that we feel can fit in the budget. And that's really all we're trying to get back to, is that this budget was driven 10 years ago when this grant was first written. And when Glenn, and Glenn was the one that worked up at Eric Auer Field and put that together with Eric Auer, and that $500,000 just doesn't seem like it's gonna work with all the things we have to do today. It's not saying that we don't want to get there and do a baseball field, we just don't know if we can get there. And the thing is, first, we have to get it signed to get the money to conceptualize and do design for this field. And that's where people are trying to put and just take the original site, the concept plan, but we have to sign this to go out to an engineering firm to design this. And then we can work after that and then we can send it out to bid, and then we can see what we can do we can design it this way with add alternates, how much is fenced, how much is getting the new well system, which we probably all agree needs a well or needs irrigation on our fields. This year, in our budget, we had issues at Sheldon because the pond went empty, and we had to spend roughly $3,000 on redoing our irrigation system because the pond went dry because we had such a drought, and we lost part of the fields.
Well, does anyone else have anything to add? Because I want to summarize what I've heard. Anyone else? So in summary, I think we've come to a conclusion where we may have a path forward with a two-phase project. I do know that there's a lot of passion on both sides. What I want to understand is that Park and Rec and all of these leads talk together on this. Yes, you're right. If we're going to make a change in the application, and we need to make sure taxpayers are aware of whether we go to a phased approach or not. So, but I also hear what Chris is saying, at some point we need to move forward so that they can start getting their design work. So we have to work as, the Board of Selectmen will decide what the order of process is here, but I think we have a path forward. I think we're close. It's just a matter of phasing it in. So with that, I'm going to move on to Selectmen's comments. Jamie?
One comment I'm going to make about the parks fields, a couple of you talked about the budget being insufficient to maintain the fields in town. So I don't know if that's something that you need to bring, we're in budget discussions right now. So this would be an ideal time if you need an increase to bring to us if there's something that we should consider, okay? So that's what, we're in that process now. Being a mother of three youngish boys, I appreciate all of you for being coaches and parents and managing and volunteering your time to coach kids to try to make sure there are fields, to volunteer to create fields on the park. On our, all of you that have been on this committee trying to do this work. It's yeoman's job. It's there's been a lot of emotions on both sides of this, and a lot of really good people, a lot of smart people in this room. So I appreciate that you guys were all here tonight and trying to help us figure out what to do so we can help the fields for our kids. So thank you for all that you're doing. I'm not, at the beginning of the meeting, there was a bunch of comments made. I, first of all, would like to thank Mr. Plinus for the work that you've done. I worked with your dad member on the Charter Revision Commission last time around, and I think, like him, you're a servant to the town, and we do appreciate all that you've done. And there was no notion that that was anything other than the fact. We do appreciate all that you've given to the town. We were sorry to hear about your resignation, but thank you for all that you have done and that you'll continue to do on the River Cog. And I know we'll see you around town doing all kinds of other because it's in your blood. So thank you for your service. And that's all I have. I do want to say one other thing. The PL pulling that together in the materials with, Deep and DPH, I thought it was very well attended. There were, I want to say about 100 people in the room.
100 people in the room and 300 live stream.
Yeah, and people were, it was clearly useful for a lot of people. A lot of folks came in from other towns. And I don't know if anyone knew, there was one person who spoke up about water and animals. And so if anybody knows who that was, I think he followed you.
It was Jerry Preston, or Jerry Graberic. He is a first, or not a first selectman, he's a selectman in Preston.
I don't think that's the person.
No, there was somebody who spoke up that said he feeds water, he uses the water.
The guy talking about the fish. Yes, he was the gentleman from, he had to save the sandwich for him.
Yeah, I know he lives in town, but if anybody comes up with his name, I just want to give him a couple of documents like that. So if you have it, if you can forward it to me, that would be great. Thank you. Anyway, I thought it was really well done. It was a lot of helpful information.
Couldn't have done it with DEP and DPH, they were helpful.
Yeah, they were terrific, and the woman from epidemiology, that's terrific. So thank you.
Lou?
I'm going to echo most of the things that Jamie shared, and I'll be brief, but I do want to make a couple of points. I mean, we're really in a position where we have an approved plan. I'm not advocating for a baseball field, I'm advocating for an approved plan so that we can continue to evaluate what the right thing is to do here. The other thing that, and I'm laying that as the backdrop to get to the next point, which is one of the things that I would ask us to try and avoid. I know everything is driven by a budget, especially in a small town like ours, but I would be guarded against planning against the money that you have. And I know that sounds a little bit hokey because everything comes down to tax dollars, but if we're saying we're going to build a baseball field and we have $500,000, the two have to meet, or we have an obligation to kind of make sure that it's clear what we're going to get and what we're not going to get. And I would encourage Park and Rec to not get yourself fenced in by the cost just yet. We're going to have to deal with that, don't get me wrong, but find out what that baseball field is going to cost, because that may help us drive the decision to put in a multi-purpose field, but we need to know that information. The same thing is true for field maintenance. Really, if we've got these fields, we need folks, we're all volunteers, but come forward with what it really takes to keep our fields. It's important to us. It's important to our kids. It's important to the value of our precious real estate that we all own here in town. It's important that we have that. And then we can make some tough decisions whether or not we're going to continue to keep those fields up. I think we should. It's an important asset to the town. So just be guarded against letting the budget drive the. Again, it was a tremendous amount of information that was brought forward to those that did participate. One of the things that I emphasized in that meeting, and I'm going to emphasize it here again, is reach out to your representatives. Make your voice known as a taxpayer. Make your voice known as a person that lives here in Killingworth, because right now, all eyes are on Killingworth taking care of this little problem, and it's not our problem. It's a much bigger problem than just Killingworth, and we need to make sure that those people that are representing us at the state level and at the federal level hear our voices loud and clear. And I would just encourage folks to make sure that happens. And certainly the last piece, Richard, I thank you for your fantastic work here in town. No disrespect intended, and I agree with what Jamie said, and I'm sure I speak for Nancy when I'm sure that we're going to see you around continuing to do the same yeoman's work that you've always done. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. My sincere condolences to the Clifton family on the loss of Mark. Not only was Mark a pillar in our community, he was a volunteer firefighter. He was an EMT. A great loss to the town. So I certainly want to wish the family our condolences. Richard, thank you for all you do, all you continue to do to serve this town. We're lucky to have you as well. We'll sort out what we need to do there. I met with Jen Favalora last week. as she talked about. She would like to meet with us regarding the budget, so I'm going to get her on the schedule once I have our dates firm. And then she would also like to come back on a quarterly basis to give us an update on what Youth and Family Services is doing. I did speak with Richard McManus, building official in Durham. He is looking to retire and is also interested in the position here. So he's going to be meeting us on March 16th. If you're around, you're welcome to join us. Oh, it's going to be in the evening. And then last week, I attended the first of several meetings to develop an RSD 17 district master plan. They are requesting a town representative to attend monthly meetings. If either of you are interested, please let me know and I will forward you the information. The next meeting is March 16th at 5:30. For those of you in the audience, we need to go into executive session, so we'll adjourn afterwards. So thank you all for coming.
And goodbye. Thank you.